Our last speaker for today, this wonderful, energetic lady who I've been chatting to earlier, Amanda Spencer. She's going to talk to us about cybersecurity strategies to protect and connect and build. She's from Cloudflare. Cloud architecture, networking, and application performance is in her space of expertise. And she also leads and mentors a team of system engineers across the ANZ. So enjoy the last presentation for today. We will wrap up 3:35. I will then call.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Hey, thanks so much for staying here to the end. I've got the very enviable task of sharing something useful and doing it such that you don't fall asleep at this time of the day. So thank you for being here. I wasn't here yesterday, but I listened to the presentations today, and it warms my heart that there is a very common theme, right? What I heard was information-driven decision-making, data-driven decision-making, mindful leadership, the human element. That's a big part of what I want to talk to you about today, right? Those things were very much a common theme today. I'm not sure if you picked up on that. And that's a very good thing, I think. Now, I'll tell you the reason why the human element is so important to me, and transparency, communication, collaboration, because my very second job, and I know you're not going to believe this, but it was in the 90s. I know I don't look that old at all, but it was. I was just kidding. I didn't know, I wanted to get into networking and connectivity and all those exciting things. And I went for an interview at a small consultant company in Johannesburg, where I'm from. And I didn't know the answer to this question. What's the difference between a switch and a router? Didn't know the answer. I got the job. And they told me why later. But nonetheless, this company they gave us these massive big DOS pack with DOS-based packet sniffers. And we had to run around solving people's problems, right? But they had a no fix, no fee policy. So I wasn't going back to the office as the only woman in the team without fixing the problem. So it was almost like, if you've seen those memes of the onboarding when someone just chucks a kid into a pool, it was like that. So the good thing about that is I learned to speak to people, I learned to talk to people, because that's what helped me find the problems, right? And then I learned to find the evidence in packet sniffing and things like that and writing a report to justify my theory. So as bad as it was back then, because I was seriously drowning, but it did help me because I spoke to people. And I think that's a very good thing. So the human element across today's presentation has been very good. So what we'll talk about today is a couple of sort of sync SINK scenarios where everything's really bad, and then we'll give you some SYNCH scenarios where, hey, let's figure out what we can do about it. And also John, I'm not sure if John's still here, the presenter before me. I swear this was not, I don't know this man. We did not collaborate, and I've got a very good analogy of how physical security in my life has aligned to cybersecurity and what the answer is and where collaboration and communication comes in. So that's awesome. It's like almost as if this was planned, but it wasn't really. Okay, so let's look at some statistics. So this is our new reality, right? So our Australian organizations frequently targeted. I mean, there's over 87,000 reports, cybercrime reports submitted to the ASD in the last financial year. So if you work that out, that's a report, that's an incident every 6 minutes. I mean, that's pretty horrendous, right? So some of these threat trends. So just to add on to, just so that you understand where some of this data is from. So Cloudflare, if you can think of Cloudflare, Cloudflare runs one of the biggest global networks in the world. And if you think about the designers of the internet back in the day, right, when they created the internet, they had no idea, as you can imagine, how the internet would be used today. So the internet was designed without security, without performance, only that good stuff in mind. So you can think of Cloudflare like an overlay to the internet that gives you that security, that gives you that performance all built in. So when you connect to the internet through Cloudflare's network, you've got that stuff built in, right? So that's kind of what I wanted to explain was where some of this data comes from, because we see around 20% of the world's internet traffic, which is a lot of traffic. So we can see some of these threat trends, right? 773% increase in the largest DDoS attacks. 33% more APIs are discovered by machine learning than what's self-reported, meaning companies and organizations don't know what APIs they've got out there. I mean, and that's been largely responsible for some of the cyber threats that we've seen. 74% of organizations obviously adopting zero trust, and that's for good reason. There's no wall perimeter, everything's distributed, so that makes a lot of sense. And phishing is the number one attack vector, so you can also think of the human element there and why that is, right, and how we can potentially combat that. So for any threat intelligence to be useful, any source, it must be trusted, it must be accurate. So a lot of organizations use multiple sources of threat intelligence. Think about what could go wrong if military intelligence used wrong intelligence to make a decision. I mean, that happens in governments all the time, right? But it's pretty disastrous and it's not great. So we need to have it accurate, we need to have it actionable, and we need to have it automated to be useful. And so these are some of the stats. So part of what I brought with me today to keep you awake and motivated is some of the coolest tech shirts. It's not this one. This is cool, but I've got a lot cooler in my bag. I've designed them myself, so it's self-proclaimed coolest tech shirts ever. So if you want to remember some of these stats, and I can maybe ask a question, or you can come and see me afterwards, and I'll give you a shirt. They are really cool. So this is our network. So this is why we see so much of the world's internet data. And we're also within 50 milliseconds of about 95% of the world's internet population. So that's a lot of metrics. That's a lot of information that we can gather and get our intelligence from. All right. So 600 million threats blocked daily in Australia. Telemetry from millions of customers in over 320 countries. And that's resulting in nearly 160% year-on-year increase in DDoS attacks, which is a lot, right? Let's look at some DDoS attack trends. So these are the latest ones that I've got from our DDoS report. So in addition to attacks getting bigger, there are also a lot more attacks. So in 2025, this year, Q2, we mitigated 7.3 million DDoS attacks, and we've just crossed halfway through 2025. And so far, we've already blocked 27.8 million DDoS attacks, which is equivalent to 130% of all of the DDoS attacks in the last year. So the increase is pretty significant, right? So this stuff's not going away. Now, this is interesting. So when we survey our customers and we ask them that are targeted by DDoS attacks that they have experienced, majority of them, 71% of them, don't know who attacked them, which makes sense because that's really the premise behind a DDoS attack. It's very distributed, right? And it's from hijacked devices. It could be anything. Like you wouldn't really know. But the interesting thing is 29% of respondents claim to have identified the threat actor, which is very common in the gambling, gaming, and crypto industries. It's always a competitor, which I found quite interesting. So we had enough information in our log statistics to share with them such that they deduced that it is a competitor, which essentially turns out to be very common in that industry, which is not really a surprise. It's like a pretty underground industry, right? Ransom DDoS attacks. So this is also an increase, right? So companies sort of threatening to perform a DDoS attack unless you give them something or some form of information, or apply a DDoS attack and then contact you and say, we'll stop it unless you give us something, right? So some kind of extortion going on. So that's also quite interesting. If you look at them over the quarter, it's pretty big. And this is just giving you some information on the top attack locations. I'll give you a website that you can go and have a look at some of the stuff. You can access this information as well, which is pretty cool. So the ranking of the top 10 most attacked locations in Q2 shifted quite significantly. So China climbed to the first place, to reclaim the first place from a couple of quarters ago, and Brazil jumped up four spots to second place. So these are just some good statistics and metrics to share with you about what's happening. So widespread targeting across global industries as well. So the ranking of the top 10 you can see there. So I won't read it out for you, but pretty much telecoms, service providers, and carriers climbed quite a way to the top. Gambling and casinos are always there as well, right? As we just said. Unmanaged APIs. So I mentioned that a lot of organizations don't really know where their APIs are coming from, or which APIs are open, should I say. So it's really just a way for one or more computers to communicate with one another. So it's incredibly common in organizations to have many of these open and obviously in use. In fact, all of the dynamic traffic that we as Cloudflare process, about 58% of that is API traffic, which is quite a lot. And oftentimes, APIs are a gateway for a much larger spectrum of data access as well. Shadow APIs, obviously, we need to ensure that those are secure as well. But you essentially can't secure what we don't know about. And again, we heard that theme through the day as well, right? So visibility and understanding of what we're actually securing is key. So almost like an asset list, I suppose, an asset register, or identifying the crown jewels, so to speak. And as I said, phishing is still the number one attack vector. It's been around for over 30 years, right? And it clearly still works. So 9 out of 10 cyber attacks actually start with phishing and various other social engineering based attacks, which I'll discuss. There's a really great book that I'll share with you around some of that stuff. So the most common goal remains the same. So the target is us, it's humans, right? And us as humans, what I've found in my journey, certainly my long journey through life, that we are quite complex beings. So there's a lot to us, right? Which is why we are commonly targeted. 50% of all phishing emails that we see, obviously associated with clicking on a link. And it's quite funny. I ended up, this is a funny story again. I'll share another story. Don't laugh at me, but this has happened to me twice, where I've driven through, put petrol in my car, and then got in my car and drove away. Like, not deliberately. I understand there's cameras there. I do have money to pay for the petrol. But it's just when you're not thinking, right? And the first time it happened to me, I had a police officer come to my house, which was very embarrassing. And I had to go and pay the petrol amount. It was like, surely he's like, well, show me. And my internet bank, there's nothing. So, okay, so I'll go pay. Second time it happened, I got a text message. And I looked at the text message, and we started to see a text message and kind of just discard it. But what made me look again was there was no link in the text message. So I'm like, oh, hang on, this maybe is something I should be looking at, which it was. So it's just a little bit of if the link's in there, you're not going to read it. But if there's no link in there, it's kind of something that just thought, oh, hang on, this is probably valid then. So that's just quite a funny story. But my family do mock me, suggesting that they don't know anyone else other than intentionally driving away without paying for petrol. But I do promise that wasn't the case. Okay, deceptive links. They're still the most common threat. BEC, business email compromise. And again, I've had some of this as well. So when I started at Cloudflare, we had just had a new sales leader start at the same time. And I had an email on my personal account from another Hotmail account, supposedly as Steve Ray, who was the country leader at the time, asking me to contact him and get in touch around compensating an employee for doing well, and if I could share some of these vouchers and all these crazy things. But it was interesting because it was his personal email that he used and my personal email that I used. And I think they were both associated with our LinkedIn accounts. And it kind of shows how people are tracking and analyzing people in the same business and doing these things that it's a familiar name. So, if I hadn't looked properly or thought anything funny of it, this is how people get caught and get caught quite easily. Okay, so what is there next to do, right? So let's have a look at mindset. So this is also a topic that that some folks talked about a little bit earlier. And many folks with a technical background, they tend to focus primarily on the operational aspects of IT or the technology, the functionality, the performance, the maintenance. But myself as a technical pre-sales or solution engineering person who now leads a team and I have to hire people, the technology aspect is just one small piece of it, right? You need to have people that can communicate with each other, they can collaborate, they have a higher sense of EQ than most technical folks might have. So this mindset thing for me is very, very, very important when it comes to cybersecurity, right? And there's many reasons for it. And hence we'll talk about the zero trust movement, so to speak, and a few other things associated with it. So this is why the human focus, right? So, some of this is quite funny. Like I do love some of these memes that come out. Like, everyone congratulating because you passed the phishing test, but nobody reads emails and things like that. So it's pretty funny. And we do this all the time. If you think about it at home, oftentimes you'll just leave the door open or you'll put an access pin. This is stuff that we do without thinking as humans because we want to make our lives easier and we want to do things, help each other out. And you see someone coming with bags, so you're just going to leave the door open for them. This is a human nature, right? We want to help each other. We want to mostly be nice. So the 7 layers, human-centric security is a huge piece of that, right? So this is the first layer, us as humans. And oftentimes we are forgotten about that. This layered model is referred to as defense in depth. But yet that first layer is really often forgotten. Most folks think that us as people are the weakest link because I've just said, hey, phishing is the number one attack vector because we're clicking on these links. But if you kind of think about if we can make us humans the strongest link, just with a few changes around mindset and organizational culture and things, that can quickly flip on its head, right? In terms of we're no longer the weakest link, but we should be seen as the strongest link. And obviously the previous images show, some of the humor about what can happen when the first layer is not on the journey with us. So human-centric security, this is a busy slide, but I just want to it just recognizes that humans play a critical role in organizations' cultural and security posture, right? Um, we run as Klaus say, I'm in technical pre-sales, which essentially means I'm in sales. It's my job to set preference inside of our customers for Cloudflare technology. But we're still technologists at heart, and we run and organize a lot of communities. We like to participate in events like this because we want to build a community. We want to be able to share knowledge and things for good reason, which I'll explain in a little bit. But we do a lot of roundtables and executive lunches and stuff in an effort to try and connect us to each other and to different organizations and break down silos and all those good things, because this is a real thing, right? So human-centric security is definitely a thing. So this is an example I wanted to give you around, I suppose there's a couple of examples. LinkedIn. So I started following Sarah Armstrong-Smith, who's one of the chief security advisors at Microsoft. And she's based in London, in the UK. And I started following her work because she's very much focused on human-centric security. So I started enjoying reading her articles. She's written a couple of books, which I've read, and they are truly some of the best cyber books that I've read in a very long time. And the one about understanding the cyber attacker mindset, it sort of put me onto this whole new social engineering, human hacking, and dark psychology and manipulation. And it was like a really good thing to read about in this complexity of us humans, right? In her book, she talks about, I don't know if you guys remember a fella called Tony Sales. He was a UK con artist. And this dude conned people out of money, significant amount of money, just by sort of sitting down with them, having a chat, and all of a sudden these people are just giving him all their money. It was incredible. But there's I just added that in. I was a little bit cheeky one day because all of the community events that I spoke about, I was punching some of the information from her books, and we're sharing a whole bunch of info. And I hadn't actually finished reading the book. And I'm like, hey man, I've not finished reading the book. I'm handing this book for you. Can you just summarize it for me real quick? Thinking she's never going to answer. She's a busy woman. And she did. So it was really nice of her. And that's just an example of building your community, expand, be brave enough to reach out to people, connect with them, ask them for information. And because of that connection, I've made another connection. Someone mentioned a hacktivist early on as well. There's another hacktivist. He's a Zimbabwean fella working in the UK. And I've now got him talking at our Cloudflare Immerse technical function next week in Sydney. So it's about that sort of widening, casting the net wide and connecting with like-minded folks and just enabling and building our knowledge by sharing knowledge with other people. So this is an example that John and I did not plan together, but this is from my own experience, right? So I was born and raised in Johannesburg, as I mentioned, in Joburg. It was commonly known to the locals. And obviously there's a lot of political issues over there, and as such, the crime rate is fairly high. So when I was growing up in the 90s, I was watching the crime rate increase, and I was watching what everyone was doing to their houses, right? And the crime rate did not go down. It just went up and up and up. So everyone started putting fences around the perimeter, right? And then what happened, that was enough. So people put burglar bars on windows. So that wasn't enough. So everything just kind of carried on going, and people put higher bars on massive 7-foot walls and so on. And also electric fences on top of that, because that wasn't enough either. So of course, over the years as I'm going out and watching, nothing's helping, right? This is not helping. Even so, more and more security. You can think about sorry, let's go back one. If you think about, you guys know, someone mentioned it earlier, micro-segmentation, right? Network segmentation means once the attackers are in, you want to stop lateral movement. That's what that is. So all of a sudden, people are doing doors and security gates inside the house to stop. So I was seeing this alignment, and as I'm working through my cybersecurity industry, I'm seeing this is exactly the same. This is exactly the same as what's happening. And the only thing that we found worked back in Joburg is a community-driven approach, right? So all of a sudden, what happened was people started talking to each other. People started sharing intelligence. People started creating their own little communities, and which was good for the country back then as well, is it created a whole bunch of jobs because all these little security firms popped up and had these perimeters around suburbs, right? And these boom gates. And all of a sudden, people were talking to each other. And like neighbors were meeting each other for the first time, sharing information. Everyone was chipping in to pay for this additional security. And it actually worked the best at anything that's happened. So for me, I'm looking at that thinking, hey man, we can do the same with cybersecurity. The cybersecurity threat actors are doing that. They're collaborating, they're building big organizations, they're sharing intelligence about what they're doing. They've got dark web forums, all sorts of things. So we need to do the same, right? And that does actually work. So that's my analogy, John. We didn't tee that up, I promise. Think about organizational culture. So who of you are concerned about the culture at your businesses? Is that something you think about? Is that something that bothers you? I think about it a lot, and I think it's a big thing, right? And I think it's directly linked to insider threat. Because if you think about it, if your culture's not so hot and something happens and someone maybe leaves, they might think, oh, if I've got an opportunity that sits in front of it, and they might not be bad people, but there could be an opportunity that happens that they might think, oh, I might just ditch that router or do something malicious, right? Whereas on the other hand, if you've got a fairly decent and organized culture, people don't really think like that. They generally won't think like that. So very much those things around the human side are very much related. And I don't think a lot of cyber people think about that. I mean, they should be talking to HR. They should be talking to leadership. They should be trying to promote and improve organizational culture for this reason, right? So this is what I mentioned to you as part of our community effort. We see 20% of the world's internet data. You guys can access this on your phones or from wherever. This is radar.cloudside.com. So this is anonymized data that traverses our network. And some of the metrics and some of the statistics that I've shared with you, you can go and have a look at. And if we spoke about data-driven intelligence, and I come from, as I said, that network analysis and very much data-driven background. So I can get lost in this site for hours. It's truly fascinating. And you can see on the left side, you can see everything from traffic, security, through to downtime. There's all sorts of stuff in there. And there's a very interesting AI section in there. So you can go and have a look at the top AI websites and services and tools that's in use. I've never even heard of some of them. So it like gives you can go and try them out. So I just wanted to share this with you because this is also about community-driven approach. We want to share this information with you because this information could be valuable for many different reasons, particularly the security, particularly the trending, and it's pretty useful stuff. So this is just sharing some of the features and functionality. We can look at DNS trends because the cool t-shirt I was telling you about earlier is our DNS resolver 1.1.1.1 in big colored letters. It's pretty awesome. I love it. And we get information from there as well. So you can view it worldwide. You can do comparisons from Australia through to New Zealand, through across the globe. And you can also look at, we do a year in review sort of portal as well for you, where you can go and have a look at how much did the internet usage rise last year versus the year before. That's just good stuff to look at. So some more information that you can see, outages, internet traffic, connection quality, routing. It's pretty cool. So I'd encourage you to have a look at it. It's obviously accessible by everybody. And some of the things, I don't know, some of the organizations here, I'm not quite sure what you do, will be, you might want to, maybe you're developing an application, right? An app, and you're hosting it or developing it for an Australian market, and you want to know what mobile operating system is in use. Is it iOS versus Android? And you can use this information to say, okay, well, I'll focus my efforts on iOS for the ANZ market. Or if you go into, India or Africa or something, you might have a different approaches to what you want to do. Okay, so again, human-centric security, a lot on there, but really it's about knowing what your employees are doing, right? So another quick story. I've got a sister who works in the healthcare. She used to be a pediatric nurse. She's now working for the company that distributes the high-end sort of ICU equipment for the babies in the neonatal ward. So she trains the nurses in there. So she's got to roll into the hospital. She's got a laptop. She's got a presentation. She has to train the nurses. She's got no access to a projector, right? So she can't use her USB sticks being blocked down. She can't transfer via emails. She cannot get her presentation she can't plug into their network so she's like literally got no way to do the very thing she was employed to do. And not one of her global IT or cybersecurity people will talk to her about it. I think that's pretty sad. So know your business, speak to your users, find out what they need to do and meet them in the middle somewhere. And that will avoid all the shadow work and all that kind of stuff that comes out of it as well. Security awareness training. So this is where collaboration and communication comes in. Speak to your colleagues, break down silos, see what's working. Because I mean, the whole click, 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 next type stuff doesn't work, really. There's a different way that we can bring users on our journey, I think. Zero trust, hugely important. If you're not adopting that way, I would encourage you to do that. I mean, the dude that actually designed and coined zero trust, he started talking about it in the 1980s, right? And we're only like jumping on it now. And some people say, yeah, but we didn't need it back then. But it was still a pretty good security principle, right? LLM adoption. Have a look at vendors that are giving you security tools to help you have visibility into obviously what your users are doing and how they're doing it. Enterprise licenses for any kind of AI tool, I think, is a must. So at least you can contain the data in these tools that your users are using. And again, as I said, have a look at what your vendors are offering you in terms of visibility and protection specifically for AI, right? So this is a firewall for AI that you can kind of tack on the back of a web application firewall, a WAF, that Cloudflare offers, as an example. Okay, so some last few slides here I wanted to share with you. We're living, obviously, in very unprecedented times. Someone described 1 year in IT and cybersecurity as like a dog year. It's like 7 years. That's the rate of change that's happening. It's quite interesting because I think that's quite true. C-suite, board level, get these guys on board. AI-driven threats require AI-powered defenses, right? That makes a lot of sense. Zero trust is the standard. Resilience. Resilience is a lot about what is taught in those books that I shared with you. It's no longer optional, right? So it's not a matter of if we get breached, it's a matter of when. So making sure that you've got that resiliency plan, which is really how quickly can we eradicate, contain, and recover. And the last few points of just some of the C-suite moves. This is from a Cloudflare Signals report. So I've got 3 slides after this with some QR codes that you can look at and then download some really crazy malware. No, I'm kidding. I'm really kidding. It's just sharing these links with you, but that's probably what everybody thinks. So just some of the moves in that Signals report is obviously just giving you things to think about, to incorporate into your strategy. It's a cyber strategy plus a resilience strategy, essentially, at the end of the day. And this is what I was mentioning earlier. So some of the information in here, we've got a Cloudflare security brief. So this is industry information that is really, very useful. So I'll just give you a minute to grab that one. And then there's also a state of the application security. That's 2024's. We should be releasing a 2025 one out in the next few months. Which is pretty good. And it's also the last one is our Signals report. So this is really around the resilience piece. And there's some really good information in there, some of which you've seen in the slide deck. And did I finish on time? Because that's what I've done. So thank you. So now everybody's going to want one of those cool shirts. I'm envisioning like heaps of questions. Well, that's it. That's good. I'm the past that page. Really super. Seriously, not done with also so much to think about that. We actually like for one. Well, I do not. Cloudflare. To know. Yeah, there's so much to tell you about that place. I can tell you. I'll be honest. I've been in the business systematics, and I'm not worked for a company that's undergoing such rapid growth as what Cloudflare is. It's incredible. Like I need this solution engineering team, and I've done nothing but hire and technical marketing. So if you want to know anything about hiring and difficult conversations and negotiations, you can talk to me.
I hear that hiring is very difficult right now.
It is.
With too many applications.
But thank you again.
Just hold on 1 second. I have one question. In the whole conference, pretty much, I didn't hear very much about cyber insurance. I have loads of clients who had it, who are canceling it because they can't afford the premiums anymore. And we're now focusing on resilience, business continuity, just like you're saying. Is that what you're seeing too? Or what is your slant on cyber insurance?
Yeah, it's something that I think a lot of customers are keeping just because it's probably the right thing to do. It is costly. I think I've not heard customers too much going away from it. Yeah, I partner particularly to do a lot of these community events with a fellow that has mentioned he's got his own digital forensics organization. And he's getting caught in when things are bad, right? And a lot of times, the insurance companies, they're a part of it, but they're not quite as visible, I think, as what one would like. But I think people are still, it's almost like a checkbox. I think that'll still be there for a while. Yeah.
Yeah, the exclusions and understanding the legal documentation around it. You need technical as well as legal peers to understand it.
That's right.
And on the day of the incident, there tends to be a lot of surprises. Like either we're not covered or, we thought we would get experts from the cybersecurity company and they're overloaded.
That's right. And you rely on these people for direction, for guidance. And there's just, you have to go out to another third party or a partner or whatever.
And they're also overloaded.
Yeah.
Give it up for Amanda. Fantastic presentation.